Every morning, countless women over 60 wake up and reach for a glass of plain water, trusting it as the safest and healthiest way to start the day. It feels natural, responsible, even protective of the skin. But very few ever question whether the aging body still processes that morning water the same way it did decades ago. What if this familiar habit is quietly working against skin repair instead of supporting it? I'm Dr. Eliza Hart, a board-certified obstetrician and gynecologist with over 15 years of experience caring for women's health and hormonal changes later in life. In my clinical work, I often meet women in their 60s who begin every morning by drinking a glass of plain water, believing it is the healthiest habit for their skin and overall well-being. Yet many are surprised when their skin still feels tight, dry, or slow to recover, despite doing what they have always been told is right. What's often missing from this conversation is that the body after 60 no longer processes morning water the same way it once did, as hormones, digestion, and circulation quietly change over time. If these conversations matter to you, please subscribe and comment with the name of the country you're watching from, so I can see how far this message is reaching women around the world. Stay with me until the end, because I have one small but important insight about this morning habit that many women have never been told. Now let's look at what truly happens inside the body when you drink plain water first thing in the morning after 60. 1. Morning physiology after 60. As women move beyond 60, the body no longer wakes up in the same internal state it once did, even when morning habits remain unchanged. The early hours are no longer a clean reset, but a gradual transition from nighttime repair into daytime alertness, shaped by slower cellular signaling and a nervous system that now takes longer to fully stabilize. During this window, cortisol rises naturally to help the brain wake up, while digestion, circulation, and fluid distribution tend to respond more slowly than they did years earlier. This creates a subtle imbalance where the body is awake yet not fully prepared to receive and direct fluids in a way that truly supports the skin. In my clinical practice, I often see this mismatch play out in very familiar ways. One patient, Margaret, a 68-year-old retired teacher, told me she never missed her morning glass of water because she believed it was the foundation of healthy skin and lifelong discipline. Yet despite her consistency, she felt her face becoming tighter and more uncomfortable as the morning progressed, especially on days when she woke up feeling rushed or unrested. What she was experiencing was not dehydration in the traditional sense, but a timing issue rooted in how her body now handled fluids at the start of the day. Research helps explain this shift. A study published in the Journal of Gerontology observed that older adults process water differently due to age-related changes in digestive efficiency hormone signaling and total body water distribution. In simple terms, fluids are absorbed and retained less effectively in peripheral tissues, including the skin, particularly during periods of hormonal fluctuation, such as the early morning. This means that drinking plain water immediately after waking does not always translate into meaningful hydration where it matters most. For many women, this leads to a confusing cycle of self-doubt. They drink water, faithfully follow their skincare routines, eat carefully, and still feel that something is quietly working against them. The issue is not neglect or doing something wrong, but relying on habits formed when the body's internal rhythms were far more resilient and forgiving. After 60, the body becomes more sensitive to timing and less adaptable to routines that once worked effortlessly. Recognizing this shift is not about questioning the value of water, but about understanding when the body is truly ready to use it well. Once that perspective changes, it becomes easier to see why gentle adjustments can make a noticeable difference, and why the morning deserves closer attention before we move further into what comes next. 2. Hydration is not the same as drinking water after menopause. One of the most common misunderstandings I encounter among women in their 60s is the belief that hydration and drinking water mean the same thing. They may look identical on the surface, but inside the aging body, they function very differently, especially after years of hormonal shifts that subtly reshape how the body responds to even the simplest habits. Hydration is not simply about how much water enters the stomach, but whether that fluid can be guided into the tissues held long enough and used where repair is actually taking place, particularly in the skin. As the body ages, several quiet changes occur at the same time. Mineral reserves gradually decline. Circulation becomes less efficient in the hands, face, and outer layers of the skin, and hormonal shifts alter how cells signal for and retain fluid. Together, these changes mean that plain water often moves through the system too quickly, offering a temporary sense of refreshment without delivering lasting hydration to the skin. Many women interpret this as a sign that they need to drink more when the real issue is how the body is processing what is already there day after day. I recall a patient named Linda, a 63-year-old former office manager, who proudly told me she carried a large water bottle everywhere and refilled it throughout the day. Yet by mid-afternoon, she described her skin as papery and uncomfortable, no matter how carefully she applied her creams or how disciplined she tried to be. Her frustration was not rooted in neglect, but in the confusion of doing everything she believed was right while seeing little reward. Medical research helps clarify this pattern. Studies published in Menopause have shown that postmenopausal women experience changes in fluid regulation and electrolyte balance that reduce the skin's ability to retain moisture even when overall water intake appears sufficient. In practical terms, this means water alone may no longer be enough to support skin hydration once hormonal transitions have settled. Over time, this gap between effort and outcome can quietly undermine confidence and create unnecessary self-blame. Women begin to question their routines, their bodies, and even their self-discipline when the truth is far simpler. After menopause, hydration becomes a process rather than a quantity, and once this distinction is understood, it becomes easier to see why familiar habits stop producing familiar results. This understanding naturally leads us toward the role of stress hormones and their influence on the skin, which is where the conversation needs to go next. 3. Cortisol stress and the skin barrier. Long before wrinkles deepen or dryness becomes visible, the skin often begins to change under the influence of stress hormones that operate quietly in the background. Cortisol, which naturally rises in the morning to help the body wake up, plays a far more complex role after 60 than most women realize. At this stage of life, cortisol no longer rises and falls as smoothly as it once did, and when it remains elevated for longer periods, it can subtly interfere with the skin's ability to protect and repair itself. From a physiological perspective, cortisol directs energy away from long-term maintenance and toward immediate alertness. In younger bodies, this shift is brief and well-regulated. In older bodies, however, prolonged cortisol activity can weaken the skin barrier, reduce moisture retention, and signal the breakdown of collagen over time. This is why some women notice that their skin feels thinner, more reactive, or less resilient during periods of emotional or physical stress, even when their skincare routine has not changed. I once worked with a patient named Carol, a 70-year-old caregiver for her husband, who described her mornings as rushed and mentally heavy. She told me that no matter how carefully she drank water moisturized or avoided harsh products, her skin seemed dull and fragile by late morning. What stood out was not her routine, but her constant state of tension. Her body was waking each day already stressed, and cortisol was quietly shaping how her skin responded to everything that followed. Scientific studies support this connection. Research published in experimental dermatology has shown that elevated cortisol levels are associated with impaired skin barrier function and increased collagen degradation, particularly in aging skin. In simple terms, when stress hormones dominate the morning environment, the skin becomes less capable of holding hydration and defending itself against daily wear. This does not mean stress is the sole cause, but it is often the missing piece that explains why hydration and skincare efforts fall short. Before we move on, I'd like to hear from you. If you notice that your skin feels worse on stressful mornings, comment 1. If you've never connected stress to how your skin looks or feels, comment 0. Your responses help me understand what women are experiencing in real life. When cortisol quietly shapes the morning landscape, even the best habits can struggle to work as intended. Recognizing this influence allows us to look beyond surface solutions and consider how timing and internal signals shape skin health. This brings us closer to understanding how collagen itself becomes affected throughout the day, which is the next piece of the story we need to explore. 4. The collagen connection. Collagen loss rarely announces itself suddenly. Instead, it unfolds quietly through small daily signals that are easy to overlook, especially when routines feel familiar and well-intentioned. After 60, collagen is no longer maintained automatically by the body's internal rhythms. It depends heavily on timing circulation and the chemical environment created throughout the day, beginning with what happens in the early morning hours. From a biological standpoint, collagen production and preservation require stability. Skin cells need adequate blood flow, balanced signaling from hormones, and an internal environment that is calm enough to prioritize repair over survival. When these conditions are present, collagen fibers are maintained and rebuilt gradually. When they are disrupted even briefly, the body shifts its focus away from long-term structure and towards short-term adaptation, which slowly weakens the skin's support system. In practice, this explains a pattern many women describe without fully understanding. I often hear patients say that their skin seems to give up earlier in the day, even when they hydrate, eat well, and apply quality skincare. One woman, Helen, a 69-year-old former librarian, explained that her skin looked acceptable in the mirror at first, but by midday, it appeared looser and more lined, as if it had lost its firmness too quickly. Her experience reflected a deeper issue not with effort, but with how collagen responds to the body's internal signals over time. Medical research reinforces this observation. Studies in dermatoendocrinology have shown that stress hormones and impaired circulation can reduce fibroblast activity, the very cells responsible for producing collagen. In aging skin, these cells are already less active, which means they are far more sensitive to unfavorable conditions earlier in the day. When the internal environment is rushed, depleted, or imbalanced, collagen support quietly weakens long before visible changes appear. This is why collagen decline after 60 often feels confusing and unfair. Women do not suddenly stop caring for themselves, yet results become inconsistent. The issue lies in the fact that collagen responds to patterns, not isolated actions. A single habit may seem harmless, but repeated daily under the wrong conditions, it can influence how skin structure holds up over months and years. Understanding this connection shifts the focus away from chasing quick fixes and toward creating conditions that allow collagen to function as intended. Once the importance of these early signals becomes clear, it opens the door to subtle adjustments that respect how the body actually works now. From here, the conversation naturally moves toward how small changes in approach can support the skin more effectively without adding complexity. 5. A gentle morning adjustment. Once women begin to understand how morning physiology, hydration, stress hormones, and collagen are quietly connected, a natural question follows, often accompanied by a hint of concern: what should be changed, and how much effort will it require? The reassuring answer is that this stage is not about adding more routines or enforcing strict rules, but about making space for the body to transition more gently into the day it is already trying to manage. After 60, the body benefits from a slower handoff between nighttime repair and daytime activity. During this transition, digestion, circulation, and hormonal signaling need a brief window to synchronize before being asked to absorb and distribute fluids efficiently. When this window is respected, the body becomes more receptive and small inputs begin to work more cooperatively rather than competing with internal stress signals. In clinical conversations, I often frame this adjustment not as a correction, but as a refinement. One patient, Susan, a 67-year-old former nurse, shared that she stopped rushing her mornings after retirement, but kept her old habits out of familiarity. When she allowed herself a few minutes of calm before drinking water, she noticed that her body felt less tense, and her skin no longer reacted as sharply to the rest of the day. Nothing dramatic changed on the surface, yet the internal response was noticeably different. This shift works because it aligns with how the aging body now prioritizes energy. Early in the morning, the nervous system is still sensitive, and the digestive system is easing into activity. Giving the body a moment to settle allows circulation to improve and cellular signals to stabilize, creating a more welcoming environment for hydration and repair to take place. Over time, this can influence how well fluids support the skin rather than simply passing through the system. What often surprises women is how subtle this adjustment feels. There's no sense of restriction or deprivation, and no pressure to perform a perfect routine. Instead, it encourages awareness of the body's pace, something many women instinctively recognize but have learned to ignore. This approach respects the fact that aging does not require more force, but more understanding. As these gentle changes begin to take effect, the body often responds before the mirror reflects anything different. Small sensations emerge that signal cooperation rather than resistance, offering clues that the internal environment is becoming more supportive. Recognizing these early responses prepares us to notice the signs that indicate when the body is truly beginning to work with us again, which is what we will explore next. 6. Early signs your body is responding. Before the skin looks different in the mirror, the body often communicates change in quieter, more subtle ways. These early signals are easy to dismiss because they do not resemble dramatic results, yet in women over 60, they are often the most reliable indicators that internal conditions are beginning to shift in a healthier direction. Long before collagen density improves or lines soften, the body tends to express relief first. One of the earliest changes many women notice is a different quality of sensation in the morning. Instead of waking up with skin that feels tight, reactive, or uncomfortable, there is often a sense of calm, as though the face is no longer bracing itself against the day ahead. This feeling is not cosmetic. It reflects changes in circulation, nervous system tone, and the skin barrier's ability to hold on to moisture rather than losing it immediately. In my practice, I have heard this described in many personal ways. A patient named Elaine, a 72-year-old grandmother, once told me that the first thing she noticed was not how her skin looked, but how it felt when she washed her face. She described it as softer and less fragile, almost as if it no longer needed to be handled with caution. At the time, she assumed it was coincidence, yet this sensation appeared consistently once her mornings became less rushed and more aligned with her body's pace. From a physiological standpoint, these early signs make sense. When stress hormones settle more quickly and circulation improves, skin cells receive clearer signals about repair and maintenance. The barrier function becomes more stable, reducing water loss and sensitivity. This creates an internal environment where collagen-supporting processes can operate without constant interruption, even if visible changes take longer to emerge. Another common signal is improved response to familiar skincare. Products that once felt heavy or ineffective begin to absorb more evenly, not because the product has changed, but because the skin's receptivity has improved. This often surprises women who believe their routine was the problem, when in reality the timing and internal conditions were the missing pieces. These signs are not promises of instant transformation, but they are meaningful markers of cooperation between the body and daily habits. They suggest that the system is no longer working against itself. Paying attention to these subtle shifts helps women rebuild trust in their bodies, replacing frustration with understanding. When these signals appear, they quietly confirm that the foundation is being restored, allowing us to appreciate why small habits can carry more influence than we are often led to believe. 7. Why this small habit matters more than you think. What often surprises women the most is not how subtle these changes feel, but how much influence a single repeated habit can hold over time. After 60, the body becomes less responsive to occasional efforts and far more shaped by patterns that unfold quietly each day. This is why a habit that seems insignificant in isolation can gradually steer the skin and the entire system in a supportive or unsupportive direction without ever drawing attention to itself. From a clinical perspective, the body thrives on predictability. When mornings begin in a way that respects its slower rhythms, internal systems communicate more clearly with one another. Circulation improves steadily rather than in short bursts, stress hormones resolve more efficiently, and repair processes are given a chance to continue instead of being interrupted. Over weeks and months, this consistency creates an environment where the skin is no longer fighting against internal signals, but responding to them with greater resilience. I have seen this play out in patients who initially felt skeptical about making small changes. One woman, Patricia, a 71-year-old former accountant, once told me she doubted that something so ordinary could matter. Yet after several weeks, she noticed that her skin no longer seemed to decline as the day went on. It did not transform overnight, but it stopped feeling as though it was constantly losing ground. That shift alone changed how she related to her body, replacing vigilance with ease. This matters because aging skin is not only influenced by what is applied to it, but by the conditions in which it lives. Collagen hydration and barrier strength respond to the body's internal climate, which is shaped gradually by repeated signals. When those signals become calmer and more coherent, the skin has a chance to stabilize rather than compensate. The deeper lesson here is not about perfection or control. It is about alignment. After 60, the body rewards habits that work with its current needs rather than those rooted in past versions of ourselves. Small adjustments practiced consistently can restore a sense of cooperation that many women believe they have lost. When this cooperation returns, the skin often becomes the first place where it is felt. Not as a dramatic change, but as a quiet reassurance that the body is still capable of responding when it is approached with understanding instead of force. As we've seen, this is not about fearing water or abandoning habits that once served you well, but about understanding how the body after 60 asks to be met with more awareness and patience. Small morning choices quietly shape hydration, stress, and collagen in ways that add up over time, often determining whether the skin feels supported or constantly strained. My advice is simple. Slow the morning down, listen to early signals from your body, and allow habits to evolve as you do, rather than forcing yourself to keep pace with the past. If this channel has helped you see your health with more clarity, and you'd like to support the work that goes into creating these conversations, a small donation can make a meaningful difference and help this channel continue to grow. And if this video resonated with you, please like it, share it with someone who might need it. Subscribe to the channel, and thank you for spending this time with me today.